What's up, Dr. Family? This is Super Mike. And today we're going to get into a little science. We're just going to get into a little science. We want to get into some of this science because there's a lot of people out there that really don't believe there's a war. And they can only see things and only believe things if it's proven. And they get blasted. So anyway, what's going on? This is Super Mike 2164. I want you to press the like button. I want you to press the share button. Share this message with your social network. A lot of us so-called conspiracy theorists, which are basically just critical thinkers, a lot of us already understand that there is a war going on. And the best way to win at a war is using deception. You got to use a form of deception because sometimes when you're dealing with an enemy that you can't outright defeat and your objectives are one thing that you can't get outright with an overwhelming display of physical force, you have to create and set up certain situations, especially if you have control over the environment. If you have control over the environment, then you can set up certain situations that lead you to your goal. So we got to understand that the way this thing, the battle is being led, is they're using the power and the trends of society to try to lead everybody to the objective that they're trying to get to. Who is they? Who is us? Who's doing this war thing? I'm gonna show this clip again. I want everybody to think when they look at this clip. Just think about it.
Dr. Mark Breedlove at Michigan State University says he can take this male rat and make it behave like a female for the rest of its life.
Cut this down. Start that again.
Dr. Mark Breedlove at Michigan State University says he can take this male rat and make it behave like a female for the rest of its life and vice versa for a female just by altering the hormones it's exposed to right at birth. Because rats are born underdeveloped, that's roughly the same as altering a third trimester human fetus in the womb. But first, he said, I'd need a crash course in rat sex.
He's a Romeo.
He's Romeo. Ooh, look at him.
Notice he said he's a Romeo, meaning they know how to produce this behavior. A Romeo. They know how to produce behavior. And keep in mind, they will not study rats. This is science, guys. Because the first thing a lot of folks will say, well, I'm not no rat. Okay. They're saying that it's basically like the third trimester in a human. Okay. You know, we go through a certain cycle. Our bodies are biological. They know that they can study other animals and reproduce similar effects in humans. So let's go through that again, because some of us, we got to get rid of some of these arguments that pop up in our head that stop us from dealing with what's actually the truth. He's a Romeo. They can reproduce these types of behaviors, overly sexual behaviors, people who don't care what they have sex with.
Because rats are born underdeveloped, that's roughly the same as altering a third trimester human fetus in the womb. But first, he said, I'd need a crash course in rat sex.
He's a Romeo.
He's Romeo. Ooh, look at him.
Male rats like Romeo mount any rat that comes their way. In the mating process, the female, that's her being dropped on top of him, performs something called lordosis, where she lifts her head and rump.
Now, what if Romeo here goes after a male?
The male will seem profoundly indifferent.
But Breedlove says he can change all that. He gave this female rat a single shot of the male sex hormone testosterone at birth. Now grown up, she will never perform lordosis. But this male rat will. Take a look. He was castrated at birth, depriving him of testosterone.
So you created a gay rat.
All right, so so we just seen, like I said, they gave him a shot at birth. Now, when your babies are born in these hospitals, aren't they very aggressive trying to give your kids shots? You know, this is something that we need to think about. The type of hormones that you're taking, the environment, the things that you're taking while your baby's in your womb. These are the stuff that we need to think about. So today, I want to deal with some of that. We're going to deal with some of that science there. Let's look at this. So today I want to deal with what's serotonin. Well, actually, we're going to deal with a news story too. You know, on a side note, this is totally unrelated, but the Hebrew Israelites, you know, back in the 60s, Ben Amin, who actually used to be one of the ministers in the Nation of Islam, they understood that they needed to go out and let me see something here. And go to Israel. They wanted to go to Israel because they thought that, you know, Israel was their place. Actually, you know what? They thought that Israel was their place and they could grow their new nation there. That's what they thought. But today, Israel is deporting some of the Hebrew Israelites of Dimona. They're deporting them. And some of them were born there. I want to go through some of that just real quick. Let's try that. I'll see that. So it says African Hebrew Israelites. African Hebrews say dozens, at least, 46 families. Not 46 people, 46 families. So this is more than dozens. This is probably hundreds. Spokesman of group says Interior Ministry gave notice to at least 46 families that they must leave the country within 60 days, despite much of the community having permanent residency. These are Black people. And we need to file this date, understand that they are ejecting these African Hebrew Israelites from the land they call Israel today. In this land, they put these people on some of the worst part of the land, and these are Black American people that came there in the 60s, and they thought they were separating because we are the children of Israel, but They went off there and, this is from the Times of Israel. This is their news over there. So we don't expect too much of this to be a nice type of story that makes people look human. But they're saying dozens of members of there's a polygamous vegan sect. This is how they describe people who they want to deport. Dozens of members of the Hebrew Israelites in Israel have received deportation orders from the government, the group spokesman said Monday, despite much of the community having received permanent residency under arrangements with Israel. The community, which numbers around 3,000, is made of Black Americans whose leaders moved to Israel in the 1960s and believe they are descendants of an ancient Israelite tribe. Most live in the southern desert town of Dimona. Now, this is Black American children. These are people. They've been there since the 60s. We don't get to talk to them, but the point is, they're being kicked out of there, of Israel. And some of them, and basically they start off with some just to see how it looks. They want to kick them all back out. They don't care where they go, just get out. So we just got to understand, this is the 60s. Now, keep in mind, the 60s had the riots. We had a lot of uprisings that was going on. Everybody was trying to solve the problem. And these people, they decided to separate from all that situation from America. But they went right under Israel, another, violence purveyor all over the planet. So let's look at this here. I just want you to see what serotonin is. Serotonin is a brain neurotransmitter. Serotonin is a brain, it's in the body. Now, let's look at what serotonin is. Serotonin was thought to be an exciting chemical involved in the pathways regarding processing happiness, and mood regulations. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a bad mood. Okay, when you're in a good mood, you got good brain serotonin and good serotonin. When you're in a bad mood, you may have noradrenaline, or you may have cortisol too high. Okay. So recent studies bring to the light the complexities of this stimulant and how little we really know how it works. Certainly, it's important neurochemical, and it can help us to understand resilience. So your resilience, your ability to deal with mental hardship and all the issues that involve mental fortitude. This is what you're dealing with, serotonin. This article will show some good high values of serotonin. All right. Serotonin is a monoamine neurotransmitter called 5-hydroxytryptamine, or 5-HT. It is derived from the essential amino acid L-tryptophan. Essential meaning the body can't create it itself. You have to eat it, but you can't eat that serotonin. You have to eat tryptophan. Therefore, we need to obtain our 5-HT from the foods we eat. Serotonin is derived from that. And I'm not going to go through there. So they got serotonin receptors. So you got to have all that. I want to go to, so where do we find our serotonin? A lot of serotonin is stored in the gut, basically. 90% of the synthesis is in the tissue around the gastrointestinal tract. So that's your GI tract, your gut. The other 10% is found in the brain because the serotonin cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. So the brain has to make its own serotonin. So the other 10% is in the brain stem where it is produced, the RAF nuclei, and stored there in vesicles as it awaits release. So you store serotonin here in your brain. If you don't have this, you're going to be nuts. And it's not about your choices. If you take chemicals or anything like that, drugs or somebody does some something on you and messes this up here, you're going to have behavioral problems. You're not going to be able to handle certain stuff. Well, how is serotonin made and where do we get it? Yada, yada. This is tryptophan. It turns to this 5-HT, turns to serotonin. There you go. Melatonin, all of this stuff is from serotonin. So now I want to go through here. Where is that? So here, mind-bending controversy. This is from January 1974, Jane Bird. Most neurosurgeons now agree that lobotomies cutting brain pieces out. Lobotomies are cutting brain pieces out, which were performed in the thousands in the 50s, were hatchet jobs. Keep in mind, this is just 24 years from the 50s or 20 years from the 50s when this was written. So those things, they saying those lobotomies were hatchet jobs. Present day neuropsychosurgeons say their surgery does not entail bad side effects because they destroy only a small amount of cells in localized parts of the brain. Opponents of psychosurgery say that neurologists still know too little about the brain and that performing these operations is, as State Senator Chester Atkins has said, the equivalent of using a sledgehammer to tune a piano. 3 doctors at Harvard Med School have promoted the potential applications of the research in psychosurgery for social control. Psychosurgery for social control. Let's think about that again. Psychosurgery for social control. By making the projections that open the channels for both government funding, so psychosurgery for social control. They need to control y'all, and they're going to use psychosurgery to do it. By making the projection, they open the channels for government funding and public protest, because public was like, what you going to do here? But we don't know. This is 20 years ago. So this is a war that they're having on your brain before you're born. Okay? And why did they do this? Because of the Detroit riots. They call it riots. They were uprisings. Because y'all turned up and y'all wasn't satisfied with being dominated and being killed in broad daylight by Martin Luther King being killed, by Fred Hampton being killed. Y'all wasn't satisfied that the FBI was destroying your organizations, and you guys decided to resist that domination. After the Detroit riots, in a letter to the Journal of American Medical Association, Doctors Vernon Mark, Associate Professor of Surgery, William Sweet, and I'm not going to show their pictures. I'll show their pictures later. But William Sweet, Professor of Surgery, and Frank Irvine, former Professor of Surgery, cited brain dysfunction in certain Black people, really. The urban riots was done by Black people. Cited brain dysfunction in certain individuals as a possible factor in urban riots. They called for intensive research to diagnose and treat those people with low violence thresholds before they contribute to future tragedies. See? This right here. This is how they got government funding from the 60s. They got government funding to chemically lobotomize your brain. The type of treatment they suggest in the book Violence in the Brain, published in 1970, included localizing areas of the brain dysfunction. See, brain dysfunction. You're not satisfied with being, a beta. You thought you was a citizen. You thought you was a citizen. And you weren't being treated right, so you decided to riot. And so they said, okay, we're going to cut your brain up. We're going to affect your mind. That's what they did. And so right now, this is William Sweet here. This is Jose Delgado right here. This guy, Jose Delgado. This is William Sweet. This guy. Let's see. See if they got Mark Vernon in here. Let's see. Sam Irvine. Sam Irvine. There he is. Sam Irvine. These are the people that they set up the policy to destroy the brain of the black people. This is why you're not as smart as your parents back in the 60s. They was real smart. You're not that smart today. You're full of drugs. You take drugs. Y'all take drugs instead of, y'all brains is blued out with weed and special types of weed and all that. So I think right now we're going to put this is going to be part one because we're going to shut it down. But we're going to get into this tomorrow, Dr. Wesley's book. That's Dr. Wesley. Dr. Wesley right here. He came out with this book that we're going to get into. We're going to get into this book right here. All right, y'all. Let's see. So the point is, I want to close out with this, though. We need to understand that this ain't just some simple situation that we're in. We're in a invisible basic war. And it's only invisible to people who just can't bring themselves to understand that everybody ain't for you. There's people that want you dead. There's people that want you dead. They want all of you dead. And they want a genocide. So this is what it is, guys. Press the thumbs up, share this. We'll do some more of this tomorrow. We'll get into some more of this, understanding the soul on the black man, the black manhood, and black masculinity. All right? All right, family. Peace.